Hello, it's me, Jay, your DM. I use he, him.
I'm Embers Tide. I use he, him.
And I am Air, and I use he, him. And this is Insight Check,
where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decisions and retrieve the treasure of wisdom.
Isdom.
Oh my god, it's that thing where somebody's talking in your ear and you can't talk because they're talking.
It's like hearing yourself on a 1 second delay.
I really felt like I couldn't speak suddenly. It may also be the lack of caffeine.
It might be, yeah. This is going to be a very loopy episode.
I've been so tired all the time.
Oh.
It's like somebody sucked the life out of me.
How long have you been going?
It's been 5 days since you looked at me. It's been 5 days since I've had sweet tea. I think it should be mostly out of my system by now. The headaches are gone. That's really nice.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, the constant thrumming pain of my brain reopening. Anyway, welcome to Inside Check. We don't normally talk about that. We talk about delving into dungeons and bad decisions. This week we thought we'd cover a little bit about source management and what you actually the order of importance as far as getting your sources for Dungeons and Dragons. But before we do that, we should crawl around.
I could crawl some dungeons.
Yeah, we should do a dungeon crawl.
Hey, Air, I have a random question with no preparation. Do you know the chord progression to The Sound of Silence?
I probably did back a long time ago, but I can find it oh so quickly.
Instead of doing that, why don't you tell us your dungeon crawl?
I can go with my dungeon crawl first.
You dungeon crawl it up, and then I will crawl after you crawl.
You'll crawl out from under that dungeon.
Embers has just thrown a wrench into this episode.
I am. Well, I'm in kind of a good mood. This has been a period of extreme drama, stress, and anxiety on a global scale, but it's been quiet in the D&D drama land, relatively speaking. So the world may be melting, literally and figuratively, but it's been chill in D&D land, so I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, my world's on fire. How about yours?
Yeah, we've already done that one.
We're getting back to that song. It's going to be the theme of this episode.
Everything turn. No, I'm really excited because there is a book on its way to me that is the culmination of some of my preferred nerds playing D&D and infiltrating Dungeons & Dragons Wizards of the Coast proper. The Acquisitions Incorporated book has been released. I pre-ordered it like a boob so everyone else could go to their local game store, as you always should. Got theirs. I'm waiting by the mailbox like sad
I have enjoyed
Keanu.
the fruits of this labor via the means of D&D Beyond.
D&D Beyond?
Yeah, it's never been easier to read a book on launch day.
It's never been easier to read.
So yes, I've also been enjoying the fruits of this labor. The Verdun is a compelling racial option. I might have to work them into my own world. I like the idea of like a young race that hasn't like finalized yet.
I like that too.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
I thought that was the coolest aspect of when it was brought up in game, but the notion of, sounds weird to say, but like a newborn race, a newly incepted race, which has to make its own destiny in a way, sounds really attractive to me.
Yeah, it's a cool notion, and I like the idea of it. I've already got some wheels turning in my head about how to sort of incorporate that. And yeah, it's really nice.
You're off caffeine, so they're turning really slowly.
Yeah, and sometimes they just stop turning in the middle of the day, and I sleep for an hour for no reason.
That is how many people live happy, full lives. So don't
like
beat yourself up.
it. It's like I finish a nap and I get up and I do some work, and then I feel like, I could go for a nap again. And it's like, no, I just had one. Stop it. Sleep should be had after several hours of trying fruitlessly in the middle of the night. That's the only proper way.
It's the way it always was. It's the way it's
That's the healthy way that it should be.
So I think that's exciting. So part of my dungeon crawl is that AC Inc. book. I'm back on my bullshit with D&D Raps, working on a special project for those folks. I have fully caught up with Taz Amnesty, which I am such a sucker for. I love the.
I have
the world.
actually jumped onto that bandwagon as well, almost purely out of spite.
Out of spite? Spite of who? Who are you hate listening to the McElroys for?
No, I listened to, they had an episode very recently where they were like, listen now before it gets spoiled. And I was like, shit, I don't want to get spoiled. So I listened to it.
I don't want to get spoiled on this thing I'm not listening to.
Yeah. I was like, well, yeah, that was all right. You know, it was all right. And then I was like, oh, but there's an episode that just came out. And I was like, okay, so I checked that out as well. And it was like a clip show.
It was a clip show. It was a goddamn clip show.
I was like, what? You can't do a clip show in podcast D&D.
What I will say is I am a sucker for that kind of occult spaghetti western kind of story, that sort of supernatural horror kind of vibe.
I have to say the energy was definitely there in the episode that they were worried about people spoiling.
Yeah.
It was there in a way that I don't know that it's been there in a while. Like I was pretty engaged. I mean, I listened to the whole, it was a pretty long episode. I think it was like a full hour and a half, maybe 2 hours almost. It was a long one.
But if you're not on caffeine, it's like 3.5.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like. I was engaged. I have to say, I that one was pretty good, and I do want to see what happens next. So I might be back in on the Taz train. It might have finally got its claws in me.
I'm glad it did me. And the last thing is, I only do podcasts for some of these live action shows, so I'm a couple episodes behind by dearth of that. But I'm also caught up on Critical Role, which was great.
Holy
because
cow!
There has been some really evocative.
That's an undertaking right there.
Yeah, buddy. They have what I believe to be the funniest use of the spell message in their most recent podcast episode, around 1:55 into the show. I almost had to pull over in my car. It was so good.
Every time Jester tries to cast a sending spell, and they start, and Travis Willingham just puts his hands up, starts counting words, so that he can catch her in the middle of a sentence. Oh, so funny every time.
Bless them all, everyone. So that's my dungeon crawl. I've been listening. It's like that Rocky montage where he's punching that big thing of cold meat, but it's just me listening to podcasts. Probably not as good a movie, but I've done it anyway.
Absolutely, exactly like that. My dungeon, I don't think I really have a strong dungeon crawl this week. I did find a new source of art for games to look through, like inspiration for characters and places.
Spill them beans.
There's a website called ArtStation.
Ooh.
And it is where concept artists go to drop their art and like get hired.
So it's kind of like a portfolio site kind of deal.
Yeah, sort of like that. So it's something like a DeviantArt type of situation, but I guess a little more professional. So DeviantArt is for, kids who are 14 and strongly have feelings about Sonic. ArtStation seems to be a little bit more of a professional environment where people put up concept art and things like that. Man, there's a lot of really good art on that website.
Is it tagged? So it's like searchable by
it's searchable with tags, so you can find elves. I was looking through the other day for hags, which was really good and gross.
Hot centaurs, big booty minotaurs.
Can't say I've been in that market. That's more of a Falcone situation. But I had to look up some hags for a game, and boy, they got hags, and they are gross.
ArtStation, we got hags.
And they are gross. I think that's an important part of the slogan. I've been thinking about, we talked about monks a little while back, right?
We did.
I read this Korean manga. I was going on this manga website.
I had $1 for every J story I've heard that starts with this.
No, I was on this manga website, and I was like looking at dumb mangas, and I was just having a bit of a laugh. And then I found the #1 ranked manga on the site was this Korean manga, and I was just so baffled because that doesn't seem right. It seems like it should be like Cowboy Bebop or something, right? Like, why is it this random Korean manga? And it was this like 200 chapter epic about some guy who goes back in time and gets a chance to do over his life. He's like a martial artist, and he learned all this stuff, and then he perfected this technique that when he died, he got to go back and try again. Because everybody he loved died, basically, and he wanted to save them this time. And it was like really good, but man, it gave me a lot of interesting ideas from monks. Like, I feel like the way that I'm playing and going to do, like, the way that this author describes the use of spiritual energy and these techniques and like the terms that they use, cultivating. They call, whenever a person is like meditating and training their power, they call that cultivating your power. I think that's like powerful language. And then I was just like, this is a great manga to read if you want to know how to like play a monk. Anyway, instead of Air doing one, I did two. Let's go to questions and answers. I don't think I ever said the name of the manga.
You did not.
You're waiting for that endorsement deal.
Yeah, it's Demons and Gods, I believe it's the name of the manga. Moving on.
It's not a dog gun. Or a gun dog?
No, it's not Gundog. Although that also is an award-winning manga in my book. I also came across one that's called Pandemic. And it's called Pandemic because it is about people who bite each other and grow panda mascot heads. And turn murderous. So it's like there's this mascot convention and this panda starts biting other mascots and they all start becoming panda mascots and killing people. It is truly buck wild. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not good. It's very bad.
That's really threading a needle, but instead of threading a needle through a lot of ideas, it's like threading a needle away from any coherent idea.
Yeah. But we wanted to do a quick episode today, so let's get to the topic at hand.
Panda murder.
Right. Panda murder is our topic. No.
I mean, do we really need to bother? It sounds like they're doing a good enough job on their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've got it figured out.
Extinction. They're on it.
This is the worst. All right. So anyway, here we go. We're talking about sources today. There are a lot of books. The new Ack Inc. one just came out. We're about to get another one, a new starter kit, a second starter kit. And then we also have Going to Hell this year. Avernus is coming out.
Yes, The Descent.
It's a lot of books coming out in relatively short order. We just launched another book too, just recently, besides the Ack Inc. one.
Saltmarsh?
Yeah, Saltmarsh. Ghost of Saltmarsh just came out.
You're right.
So there's like a ton of stuff that's come out this year, and I think it can be a little overwhelming for people to know what's useful to own and maybe what's not. I thought maybe we could go into what is good to have. So obviously, the caveat to all of this is you don't need any of the books. There's the standard resource document, which provides the rules for all of the core 8 classes, all the way through level 20, one subclass each, so you don't get the full breadth of everything, but totally playable, and it has all the rules that you need and everything that is necessary to play. So what books do you absolutely need? None. But if you are going to buy a book, what book is the most important to get? And this is kind of interesting, Air. I'm kind of curious what you think about this, because I'm wondering which would you prefer for a new player? Would you rather them get Xanathar's Guide to Everything or the PHB?
I mean, it's probably the obvious answer, but I'm going to go PHB just because it has all the rules in there. Plus, just if you're looking for the greatest concentration of class options, it's still the PHB. Xanathar has a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
But
I mean, listen, the Hexblade alone, maybe.
I know, like, I want to say
I think the biggest problem is
favorites.
the PHB has the spells. Almost all of the spells. 90% of the spells in the game are in the PHB. So it would be hard for Xanathar's to replace that.
Yeah.
I mean, but you do have the SRD, so you're really only losing the non-SRD spells.
But there are some choice, like, non-SRD spells. Like, I think of things like Dissonant Whispers.
Sure,
like,
but there's choice stuff in Xanathar's too.
There absolutely is. I meant if you went Xanathar's and not the PHB and you were missing some of those core spells, like I can't imagine playing a bard without Dissonant Whispers, like being malevolent and whispering, having things run away.
Sure, but I can't imagine playing much of any caster without Thunderstep now, you know? Like Thunderstep is such a valuable option for rearranging your position on the battlefield and dropping some damage.
And doing damage.
Yeah,
it's a neat one.
Yeah, it's huge now. So I think there's a compelling case that Xanathars might be the go-to first book.
Really?
Does definitely have some quality options. You also got to think about Xanathars. It has the class options. How many... if you're a first-time player, I'm betting you're probably going to be looking through the set backgrounds and a lot of like your first time out kind of core backgrounds. Like I was, a street urchin,
Yeah, but aren't those SRD content?
No, those are actually not SRD content. Only I think 6 of them are. And most of them are not. Now the 6 are kind of the big ones, soldier, urchin, blah, blah, blah. The other thing is races as well.
Yeah.
Which I don't think Xanathars has at all.
Yeah, but you have most of the races in the SRD, don't you?
You have some of the races in the SRD. You have the core 4.
I think you have dwarf, elf, human, halfling. Is tiefling not SRD?
Don't believe so.
That's weird because tiefling is not like copyright to wizards because Pathfinder uses tiefling. So the 5e SRD for races includes Dragonborn, Dwarf, Elf, Gnome, Half-Elf, Half-Orc, Halfling, Human, Tiefling. So yeah, they are all in there.
Oh wow, Awesome. Okay.
So you can get all those. You can get all those in your SRD. So honestly, yeah, I mean, listen, you get the Hexblade Warlock. You get the Celestial Sorcerer, which I think is the best sorcerer subclass.
I think you get Divine Soul as well, which is the actual best sorcerer subclass.
I think I was mixing those up. I think it's the Celestial Warlock and then Divine Soul. Yeah, I always confuse those two. They're kind of similar anyway.
They are, yeah. They're the holy
you get Path of the Grave cleric, which is the best cleric.
Which is super good. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think you can't go wrong with either of those. Let's play it weak. Let's cop out and just say that.
Get both, you moochers.
I think it's probably Xanathars. Pragmatically speaking, you're going to be able to backfill a lot of the gaps if you go Xanathars, but I think if you go PHB, you'll always be tempted by by the sweet juicy morsels.
The problem with the
Xanathars.
PHB is just that you get so much of it free in the SRD.
Yeah,
like
exactly,
you get the best subclass of every single class except for fighter. I think you get I think you get champion fighter, and I would prefer the battle master be in there. But so I mean, you get the best subclass of every class. You get the life cleric. You get the iconic, I should say, maybe not best, but the iconic representation of that class for free. I think that probably Xanathars is as good an option as PHB. But either way, so first book right off the bat should be either PHB or Xanathars. You may be thinking, what about the Dungeon Master's Guide? I would rank that one pretty low, actually. I mean, a lot of the rules are in the player's handbook, and a lot of the rules are in the standard resource document that you need to run the game. Most of what you're getting in the DMG by actually buying it versus what you read through the SRD, most of what you're getting is like magic items and traps and optional rules and things like that. I ran 5th edition for 2 years without the DMG. I mean, it's nice to have, but...
I was going to say, my hot take on the DMG is it's a really great listing of magic items, and that's it.
Yeah.
But
I mean, listen, there are some optional rules in there that are kind of cool, but like...
absolutely.
We're all on budgets. Everybody's in the gig economy now. We can...
And we're not starved for lack of optional rule sets.
Yeah,
either.
exactly. There are so many books that I would rather my players have. And that's another thing. Here's another important tip for people building collections. Don't buy everything yourself. If you're on D&D Beyond, or if you're in a group of players, ask other people to shoulder some of the cost. It's not fair for one person to have to pay $300 to bring 12 books. Have one player bring Xanathars, one player bring the PHB, one player bring Volos, and eventually you will have a collection of Dungeons & Dragons content that can be pretty useful. I think Volos is actually pretty low on the necessity list too. Because all it's got is some races and monsters. Monsters.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, I think Volos is very nichey. Like, it's very much my niche. Like I love going monster exploring, but that's what I get out of it. And that's not something that I necessarily put into an adventure. That's more like my like pleasure reading. Monster exploration and monsterology is pleasure reading, so I really like it, but it's not the sort of thing that I'm reading pursuant to playing or running a D&D game. I find.
if you're intending to DM a lot, then Volos is probably a good pickup, because it's got a lot of really interesting monsters, and more importantly, it fills in a huge gap in Fey creatures, because the standard monster manual has so little to offer as far as Fey creatures.
Yeah.
I think probably I would recommend to a audience member that they pick up the monster manual before the DMG.
That's a good idea.
I mean, the monster manual has lore on creatures and monster stat blocks, which are hugely useful. As a DM, you're going to be consulting monster stats a lot more than you're going to be consulting rules in the DMG, I would hope.
I think if you're a player, there's an answer to this question, and it's different from if you're writing an adventure module, or you're doing writing, or you're doing DM prep using a module that's already built.
Player is probably not going to need the monster manual ever. If your player owns the monster manual, it's sometimes a problem.
No, this thing's immune to that. Don't cast that.
Hey, wait a minute. This doesn't have that ability. I just checked. It's like, shut up.
There's nothing worse.
Absolutely. Your needs are going to change if you're the DM or the player. But I'm just saying, like, as far as like, if we're triaging book necessity, I think that probably monster manual before the DMG, and I think the PHB and Xanathars are the two source contents that are going to be the most useful. Now, here's a kind of a spicy question. Which adventure would you suggest people go to first?
This is your spicy question.
I think this is the one where we're gonna have like wildly different opinions based on our own preferences, which is the real answer to this question is you're gonna have a preference. Read what the basic summary of each one is, and then pick the one that leans to your interests. But now, getting back to us having spicy takes, Air, which adventure? If you had to run an adventure tomorrow, which one would you get first?
It would depend on my group, of course, and what they were.
That's cop out.
That's cop out. I will also level
Screw them.
with
Who cares
say
what they think?
I have done mostly homebrewed adventures and whatnot. The only stuff I ran was some of the early adventures out of Tyranny of Dragons, like Greenest in Flames. I think I just ran Greenest in Flames, which is actually, I don't think, a particularly great adventure. You're kind of stuck in a city under siege, and you can go and do all these different things to try to make a difference, but ultimately it doesn't matter, and all the things are fighting. So
okay, but to answer the question I asked,
I'm gonna go Curse of Strahd. I think.
Oh, that's a classic answer.
It's a classic answer. You know, Ravenloft has a lot of history in it. Barovia is a cool setting. Strahd's a cool villain. And I haven't played it, but from what I've watched of like DCA and whatnot, there are a lot of options and a lot of ways to mix it up. Like, I think one of the ways you can start it is with the Taroka deck. And it kind of sets the players off on different ways of doing things. So it kind of, with some...
It's a very role play heavy adventure too.
I think that's a quality setting. You know, Gothic horror is still very big in the kind of gamer mindset.
And because Barovia is its own plane, you can set it in your homebrew as well. So you could run it in your homebrew setting, and after they, defeat Strahd, you can go on and do your homebrew stuff back in your world. Once they leave Barovia, they can go back to your world. All right, Embers, what about you? If you had to run one adventure, you could afford one adventure, which one do you think you would end up with?
I would do Tomb of Annihilation.
That's a fair choice. Chult is an awesome setting.
And that's why I think if I was going to run just one thing, there's so much meat in that adventure, and there's so much... Chult itself is so evocative, and so it's a relatively undeveloped setting compared to some of the really old canonical stuff, iconic stuff, but it's really lush, it's really rich, and you can divert in so many ways in Chult. And then if you do go back to main campaign, TOA is a very serious smorgasbord of dungeons, puzzles, baddies.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that because you could grow with it, I feel.
Yeah, when I ran Tomb of Annihilation, I basically took my players on sort of a highlight reel of Chult. I created teleportation pads that were not in the adventure that would send them from one end of Chult to the other, so I could show them the cool stuff I wanted them to see.
That's really cool.
It's a cool place, and they say it gets colder. I would say, for me, I think it would be Waterdeep Dragon Heist because it appeals to me in the sense I like urban campaigns, I like politics in my campaigns, I like warring factions. And you can get all of that in Waterdeep. So it's just like it's a classic introduction to the Sword Coast. It's going to help you understand the Sword Coast and sort of introduce you to the setting, the main setting of Dungeons and Dragons, in a way that some of the other adventures won't. And then that'll help you kind of bridge and branch out into the other adventures as they come out. So once you've introduced your players to Waterdeep, it's not so hard to then travel to Baldur's Gate, which is just down south, or to go up to Neverwinter and enjoy some adventures there. And honestly, I was reading through the Ak Inc. adventure, and it's pretty cool too. You travel a lot in that adventure. You go to a lot of the major cities. You go to Neverwinter, you travel along the coast, along the Sword Coast, you go to Phandalin, you go to Red Larch. Cool. So yeah, it's a pretty cool little breezy tour of the Sword Coast as well.
I should say I haven't read Saltmarsh yet either.
Saltmarsh is good. I think setting it in Greyhawk is difficult for me just because nothing else is set there. So I'm not really invested in the Greyhawk setting, but I mean, you could just transplant it. You can always put Saltmarsh somewhere else in your world if you wanted to.
And the nice part about Dragon Heist is it leads into Dungeon of the Mad Mage. So I don't know. I think in modern D&D, the idea of like a 15 level long kind of funhouse dungeon might be beyond the pale for some folks, but at least there is like an obvious extension going forward if you're not looking to homebrew. True. The other thing I was going to say is Tales from the Yawning Portal is probably a really good grab for a new DM because it's just a collection of classic adventures that have been reworked. Right,
you can make your setting and then use their dungeons.
Yes, exactly. You can, and it's got a whole range of different levels.
Ghost of Saltmarsh is actually like that as well. It's actually just a collection of adventures.
Oh, is it?
One. Yeah. They have the Saltmarsh city there to tie all the adventures together if you want, but they're actually just a collection of different adventure packs. Yep. So you can run each of those. Though each of those adventures is episodic, so to speak, so that you can run it as a drop in on any other campaign.
Cool. Yep. Cool. I like it.
Yeah. So there you go. Hopefully that helps you as far as picking those starting materials out and getting started.
But no matter what you do, if you have a DM's guide, burn it right now.
It's garbage. You don't need it. Oh, there's a fire sword. Whoop-de-doo.
Make your own magic items. Look up the homebrew on D&D Beyond. It's great. Speaking of D&D Beyond, another important thing to note is
it's never been easier to speak about D&D Beyond.
That's true. Another important thing to note, though, is that on D&D Beyond, your adventures everything's about $20 less because you're buying it digital instead of physical. So if you're trying to get in on the cheap, it is a little bit cheaper to buy the books on D&D Beyond. They also routinely have 50% off coupons at major events like PAX and stuff like that.
Yep.
So if a major event is running, you can just look online, find the code, and then save 50% on your purchases. I've actually seen people save so much money that they have this thing called the Legendary Bundle on D&D Beyond, which is all of the products that have ever been released. And it has just a straight 15% slash off of everything, right? So it's like $400 right now, but it gets every book and it's 15% off what you would pay if you bought them all individually at D&D Beyond's price. Which is already lower than buying the physical books. But I've actually seen people save so much money using the 50% coupons that their Legendary Bundle, even though they own everything, their Legendary Bundle still has money on it because they've actually paid less for everything than what they would have paid for the legendary bundle. And so like to actually get the legendary bundle, they would have to pay money for nothing. So yeah, you can definitely save a good bit of cash on D&D Beyond, and it's a really good service if you're just starting out. It can be kind of hard to migrate over once you've already got a physical collection of books. But if you're just starting out, I would recommend really seriously considering investing in the D&D Beyond infrastructure, because it's only ever going to kind of keep expanding and growing and becoming bigger. And since it's mobile, it's on your phone. Whenever you need your rules, you can just Google it on your phone. Yeah, it's a pretty potent thing. And if you invest in the subscription model, then you can even share your content with your players. So everybody can take the advantage of your purchases. And apparently they're coming out with gift cards for Christmas. So that'll be nice.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ask D&D Beyond what plans it has for your life.
I think that's it. I think we covered the topic of what books are interesting to start with.
We done recommended stuff.
We did.
And you did it all without that sweet, 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 sweet tea.
Yeah, I sure did.
Could you go sugar-free and just take the caffeine? Because the sweet tea is going to hit you with that sugar, too.
Listen, one step at a time, Embers.
All right.
Sugar-free is really down the road. As always, we want to thank the usual suspects for their contributions to this episode. Amy T. Falcone for our branding and avatars. We want to thank...
What?
Also, congratulations, Amy T. Falcone, for being in the Ack Inc. book, an official Wizards of the Coast product. So our avatars are made by an officially Wizards licensed individual, I guess. So we can make that claim now. Music by Vinswept, Never Stand Alone, incredible track. You can check them out on their Bandcamp. And as always, we're really grateful if you give us a 5-star review on iTunes. Forgot that part.
Please do.
It's how people find our podcast.
It is a major
Otherwise,
vector
we're
of
just
discovery.
out there on Twitter banging a metal cup against a spoon, saying, "Please, we have insight. We have
and
check."
retweet us if you see us on Twitter, because it's helpful.
Yeah.
Air, what's the thing we say?
Answering your cues from our collective A's. This
Was
Insight.
check. I'm gonna take a nap now.